Good morning, my name is Martin and this is the Tribe of the Fox. In Northwestern European and Northern European spirituality, trees play a very big role because our ancestors were basically forest dwellers, or the forest was never far away. Our ancestors have been living in forests for thousands, 10,000s of years. So of course it influenced our lore and spirituality. Now the Tribe of the Fox is very much about experiencing spirituality, and not only about reading, but really experiencing. And that's why we have this video, how to connect with trees. And in that video I tell you how to feel the energy of trees and how the energy of all these different trees is actually feels different. So, okay, but you still need a little bit of background knowledge. You still need a little bit of book knowledge. So where to start? One interesting thing is a little book like this. This is a pocket-sized book, and in the book there are all kinds of examples of trees. It's basically a book how to recognize trees. So it's very technical, you know, it tells about the types of leaves that it has, how you can recognize them, when it's blossoming, how big can the tree become, where can you find them. But it's very handy to have a little pocket-sized book about recognizing trees. So these little books are available in all languages. So it's not about this specific little book. So this one, it happens to be in Dutch. It is called Welke boom is dat? And these types of books are not expensive. So it's always good to have one in your pocket if you're going to walk in the forest or in the park. Now another book is this one. Weird Working. It's a book from Alaric Albertson. Now this book is mainly about runes. Now the Anglo-Saxon runes. Now some of these runes are directly connected with trees. So there's a background story about those runes. So it's very interesting to read about that. And it's an interesting book anyway about, because the subtitle is The Path of a Saxon Sorcerer. So this is about magic and about runes in the Anglo-Saxon tradition. So it tells about all kinds of trees. There's a rune for the oak tree, for the yew tree, and more trees. So it's very interesting to read about. Weird Working from Alaric Albertson. Can recommend it. Now here I have a book that's only available in Dutch, unfortunately, because it's really a good book. It is called Goden en Shamanen in Noordwest-Europa. So Gods and Shamans in Northwestern Europe. And it is written by Linda Wormhout. Now this book is not only about trees, it has a chapter about trees and also a chapter about plants and also a chapter about spirit animals. It's extremely interesting. Now who is Linda Wormhout? She is a teacher in Northwestern European spirituality. One of the few actually, you know, there are not so much people who can really teach that. So she has a lot of intellectual knowledge, of course, but it's about experience. And she has a lot of shamanic experience, decades. So this book is extremely practical for For the people who know how to speak Dutch, so the Dutch themselves, the Flemish people or other people who know how to speak Dutch, Goden en Shamanen in Northwest Europa. Extremely practical, this book. And if you know how to speak Dutch, do yourself a favor and check out the courses that Linda Wormhout is giving. Her website is soulritual.nl. It's very interesting, very practical. That's actually where Dirkje and we met there actually in one of the courses of Linda Wormhout. So yeah, we learned how to connect with deities, and we learned about nature, spirits, and lots of lore, the stories of our ancestors. So the interesting thing is that Linda Wormhout is very much about recreating things that she read. For instance, in the Edda poetry, you can read about the high seat ritual. Yeah, and the best thing to find out what it is just to recreate it, just to do it. And it was a very interesting experience. Yeah. So what we did was it's basically the high seat ritual is basically channeling the spirits of the land. So you can give people advice like an oracle. It actually works. But anyway, we are talking about trees here and not about shamanic courses of Linda Wormhout. But this book for the Dutch people, the Dutch speaking people, the Flemish people, very recognizable, very, how do you say this in English? Recommendable, that's the right word. Now I have two other books here that are only available in Dutch. They are written by Abe van der Veen, also known as Abe de Verteller. Abe the storyteller, if you translate it in English. So that's a man who knows a lot about our folklore. He's like a folklorist basically, and he's telling about it, he's writing about it. So he has written two books, De Symboliek van Bomen en De Wijsheid van Bomen en Kruiden. So these two little booklets contain a lot of information about trees and the stories behind them. Not just Germanic, but also Celtic, Roman, Greek, all these European folklore. It's very interesting. But again, you know, the best thing is this, just to go outside and connect with the trees. But there's still also other practices, by the way, that you can do. For instance, in the old days, people who had a fever or an illness, they could go to a tree, a certain tree, and that was known to cure illnesses. So for instance, they had this little piece of cloth, the people who had a strong fever, for instance, and they had their sweat on the cloth, and then they would go to a certain tree, or or somebody else would do it if you're too ill, and then the little piece of cloth drenched in the sweat of the one who suffered from fever was then tied to the branches of the tree. That's something that you can still practice today, you know. Another thing is hammering a nail in a tree if you're ill and the tree takes over the illness. But you know, I don't really recommend to hammer nails into trees, you know. Tying a little piece of cloth around a tree, yes, I understand that. That's pretty harmless. You know, I was lately on a cemetery, and somebody hang all these ribbons in a tree. Now that's also a very old custom, you know. You can hang your prayers, your good wishes, you can basically tie a ribbon around the branch of a tree with all your good wishes in them, and then it's just blown in the wind. Almost a bit the same principle as these Tibetan prayer flags, you know, it's a little bit the same principle. So yeah, you can still do certain practices with trees. It's still possible. Or a very old custom is if you have a house, you start by buying a house when you're young, and then you plant a tree in your garden, a little tree, and it grows and grows. And you stay in that house for decades if you're lucky, and you see the tree growing every year. And then, you know, in the old days, people used to inherit, of course, the land and the house. So this tree would stick with the people for generations. Nowadays, people buy houses once every few years, few decades. Houses are not really inherited that much as it used to be. But planting a tree in your garden, if you have a new house, it's a very nice practice. So people, this little talk was about a number of books that you can read to understand the spirituality that goes along with trees. And I told you about a few practices that can still be done with trees. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed this talk, then please like and subscribe. Please share, and please put your comments in the comment section, because I bet a lot of the viewers have experiences with trees or practice their spirituality with trees. Then please tell about it. You know, share your knowledge, build up the tribe, make the other people stronger with your knowledge and experience. That's what the comment section is for. So, yeah, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.